Armory XD pistol in the caliber of your choice. Cannot beat that deal. Frontsight.com. A lot of interesting information as well on their website, so go check it out, frontsight.com. And lastly, Diamond Gusset jeans. I'm phasing out my Levi's and going exclusively to Diamond Gusset because all the new Levi's just tear out in the crotch or tear out in the back. They're made in Mexico. They're total crud now. Levi's are a joke. It is official. I've worn them my whole life. Diamond Gusset fit great, and they've got a reinforced crotch in other areas. They've also got motorcycle jeans that are just amazing. Check them out at Diamond Gusset jeans at gussetclothing.com. That's Gusset clothing.com. And here's the best part. It's all made in America. So that's gussetclothing.com. Okay. I'm going to go back to your calls. Let's go to Herman in New York. You're on the air, Herman.
Yes, hello, Alex. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Yes, I have 3 quick questions. All right, my first question would be, how is it that somebody like me who lives in a big city like New York, how can I go about getting firearms to defend myself when things start to collapse?
Well, you live in one of 3 cities where the Second Amendment is basically banned. They've lost at the federal court. At the Supreme Court in D.C., saying that you can't not allow people to be armed, and then they get raped, robbed, and killed. But the cities don't care; they're still just carrying that through. If you get a background check and give tens of thousands of dollars to politicians in campaign contributions, they'll make a phone call and you can get a concealed carry. All the Goldman Sachs execs have them. The off-duty cops get to have them. Bureaucrats and politicians get to have them, and taxpayer-paid-for bodyguards in many cases. And there was a Bloomberg article a few months ago. In fact, pull that up on screen for folks. I believe the headline was Goldman Sachs arming themselves against public. And so, sorry, you live in the model of what they want to make America, a haven for criminals in and out of government, criminals at every level, just like many U.S. states now, you can't have burglar bars to even protect yourself. It's about making you easy for the criminal class to have their way with you.
Okay. And my second question is the nanny state. From what I've studied in history, I believe it began with FDR and his New Deal, but I hear a lot of patriots saying how great FDR was. Can you speak to that real quickly?
Well, I mean, I like Webster Tarpley, and I appreciate your call, Herman. But I disagree with him about FDR being good. It's true that right-wing Hitler-backed forces, Prescott Bush, George Herbert Walker Bush's father, George W.'s grandfather, it did come out in congressional hearings. It was confirmed. They tried to hire the head of the Marine Corps to stage a military overthrow of the U.S. to then link up with Hitler. And so people like Tarpley then like FDR because he didn't go along with that. But FDR did start the process of domesticating and getting people dependent. But the nanny state is like domesticating pigs. And I've told this many times, but going back thousands of years ago, and you can domesticate wild hogs today like this. You put up a fence area, you put some grain in it or corn every day. For a few months, the pigs get accustomed to being in the enclosure. And then generally, with bows and arrows or throwing spears or pits, you would kill the adults once you got them inside the enclosure, once they were trained to all go inside in a pack or a herd. And then you would keep the baby piglets and then raise them in smaller pens and pet them and feed them and be nice to them so that they thought of you as part of their group. But then a few times a year, you take them down the road so you don't upset the other pigs and you slit their throat. And so that's what the New Deal is. We're just a bunch of domesticated animals now. And now they're saying you're not going to get your health care. We're not, oh, you blew your knee out? We'll give you some steroids for it. Not a surgery. Oh, you need eye surgery? You're above 60? You're not getting it. Oh, you got to wait a year and a half for a brain surgery. And, of course, the insurance companies are eugenicists, and they get all the profit and tax money. Then they give you horrible care, as Dr. Ron Paul agreed earlier. And so the right wing will never talk about the fact that it's really an insurance banking scam because they're bought and paid for by those interests. The insurance companies play along with the ruse like they're against it. The left then thinks they're getting something free. When it doesn't get delivered in a few years, they'll then push total government health care, as Ron Paul said in the first hour. We're on the same page because we study the same enemy. So People who are on the government dole think the government's their friend, like a pig, when they come over and throw some slop in. They look up lovingly at their master, not knowing in a few months they're going to be hanging up by their legs with their throat being slit to bleed them out. They don't care. They don't know their master gives them water that sedates them and hurts them, because a pig has value in a domestication situation. To the elite, there's 6.5 billion of us, there is no value. So we have a negative value to the controllers. Let's go ahead and take another call here. Let's go ahead and talk to Brian in Michigan. You're on the air.
Hi, I'd like to talk about the earthquakes and why I think they're being caused by HAARP. I was on the internet doing some research, and I found a graph from a government study. In the entire 20th century, the average number of earthquakes between magnitudes of 6 and 8 were around 3, but in the last 5 years, the number has gone up to 25 and 30. I also see that...
Yes, they're having record numbers of 6 and above, all the way up to 8 pluses. But you have to understand, that's what the phony... And I'm not knocking you, but let's talk about statistics here. That's what the controllers do. They show you a 10-year period where it gets hotter, and they say in the last 80 years or 90 years it's never been this hot. They don't tell you the ice core samples show just 9,000 years ago that during the beginning of the Bronze Age, the temperature on average was almost 10 degrees higher than it is now. And so just because, since they've been registering things with seismographs the last 60 years, and it hasn't been as intensified or as... It's just like they say there's more tornadoes now. Well, that's because they've got more of the Doppler radar and other systems that catch the smaller tornadoes. But if you look at more earthquakes, there have been earthquakes so bad that areas the size of Colorado blow completely wide open and magma shoots 5,000 feet in the air and the entire earth gets partially dark for 20 years. I mean, they have... Where I sit in Austin was nothing but volcanoes in the past, and they're now all extinct or dormant. And so if you look at a 100-year cycle, then it is true that in the last 50-plus years, because you can't go back 100, that there are more intense earthquakes as of late. But, I mean, if you go back to the history books, say 2,000 years ago, Rome was constantly having volcanoes and giant earthquakes. And now they're not having as many. I mean, have you seen a volcano blow up and kill an entire city like Pompeii? No, you haven't seen that recently. So, I mean, we are continents. It's almost what Hank Johnson said, kind of an idiot savant. Islands aren't floating on the water, but islands are the tips of mountains and hill ranges that are floating on magma. Okay? So, but the government did say in 97 they have seismic earthquake weapons. We know they've been working on it. And so it could be that. It's just having a whole bunch of earthquakes all of a sudden doesn't mean that's man. Go ahead.
Okay. This year, I've seen that there's already been 72 earthquakes, and last year there were only 29. There's been a recorded earthquake every day since the first day of spring, with the exception of March 24th. And I also think the timing of it, being that this is on the heels after the Copenhagen Treaty and Danny Glover coming out saying that this is the cause of global warming.
Well, I agree with you that it's suspicious that they continue to hit mega population centers. The very city in Haiti that's the biggest city in Chile, hitting San Diego, L.A., biggest cities on the West Coast. It is suspicious that they can, because you've always had big earthquakes, but generally they're out in the ocean or they're somewhere, and then people say, well, you're only paying attention to the ones that are in big cities. No, I've looked at the graphs you're looking at. Most of these big earthquakes are happening in very dense population areas. But according to Congressman Hank Johnson, that may be because people are sitting on the edge of California, and that's weighing the island, so it may be about to capsize. That's just as real as global warming.
Yes. Well, that's all I got. Thank you.
But I mean, well, thank you, sir. But do you understand my point about you can't compare 100 years to another 100 years? Like when they say we need to stabilize our climate. The climate's never been stable. We're a giant planetoid that's got an atmosphere thinner than the skin of an apple, hurtling through space at 20-something thousand miles an hour around a gigantic sun. There's nothing stable about that. There's a giant asteroid belt. Comets come flying by us. There's nothing stable about it.